And welcome to this week's edition of the Reigns on the Cardinals podcast. Rob Reigns, Mike Reigns here with a week's worth of Cardinal baseball to talk about. And a week ago, as we sat here and previewed opening day, I think if you got to the next off day on Thursday and said Cardinals are going to be 4-2 on the first homestand, you probably would have been very happy.
I think we'd be very happy with it. And I think if you would have said that every game is going to be a competitive game, your 2 losses are in extra innings, I think you'd be happy with that.
And remember back in spring training when we were questioning the Cardinal offense? Seems like a long time ago now. I know you can overreact to the first week of the season or you can underreact to it. I mean, we didn't think the Braves were going to still be looking for the first win or the Dodgers and Padres will be undefeated. But I have to like what we've seen out of the offense.
I've liked it a lot for sure. And I think anyone that's listened to this podcast knows we said this is going to be a fun team to watch. And I think the kids are going to go out and have some fun. And they really are. You know, whatever the Angels in the outfield new celebration thing is that we're doing, but everyone is having fun and they're competitive games.
Of course, you always have more fun when you're winning.
Of course.
We understand that. And I think the frustrating part, if you look at the Cardinal record, the 4-2 record to start the homestand, as we sit here on Thursday with the day off before they go to Boston to start the first road trip on Friday, they could have been 6-0.
And there's a couple of those scenarios where you say, yes, they should, because the two games they lost in extras were the 2 games that the runners in scoring position, they didn't hit as well as the other 4. And I think it makes a difference. Now, we could sit here and second guess and say Pop should have sent Donovan on that. I don't know if it's Pop's call or if it's Donovan's call. It's probably Donovan's at that point. In my opinion, you send him because what do you got to lose?
The game was tied. The game was tied, correct.
It's not the tying run. There's a big difference. And so you're already tied at that point in extras. So I think you have to try. Now, it was a bad throw. Would he have been safe? I don't know. We can sit here and second guess it all day, but
correct.
I would have tried.
The other thing I would have done different, I think, in those couple of games, I was going to talk to you about it later, but we can talk about it now too, is the pitching selection of the order of the relievers. Ali Marmol chose to bring in Ryan Helsley in the 9th inning of both of those games with the game tied. And that's, you can look at that. But I think at home, I would rather have Helsley pitch the 10th because of the fact that you're already starting with a guy on base. Strikeouts are more important. And he's a strikeout pitcher. I would have kept somebody else to pitch the 9th because you still have a chance to come back in the bottom of the inning if they do score a run. And it's harder for them to score a run when they don't already have a guy on second base. So that's the only thing I would have second guessed and nitpicked a little bit is I would have had Helsley in the 10th inning instead of the 9th.
And I get that scenario and that makes sense, but I would not have done that. And it's kind of like the concept when he said,
well, then you're wrong.
He didn't want to pinch hit for Gorman there because he's like,
right.
For Mason Wynn.
Right.
He didn't want to pitch in for Wynn because he's like, well, Wynn's our shortstop. To me, I want to play for the inning that I'm in. Now, I understand managers have to try to think ahead, but to me, if you don't hold them in the 9th, the 10th doesn't matter. So in me, I want to use my closer in the 9th at home because I don't want to give up any more runs and I want to try to win it in the 9th.
And I get also depends too who else is available and what they're and the matchups and whether it's a lane for a left-handed pitcher or a lane for I know that doesn't matter for Helsley, but maybe there was and I don't remember now who was batting in which inning. But when you lose, you kind of look and say, what could they have done a little bit differently? And that's that's kind of probably what it was.
But I think coming into it, there were a lot of question marks about this offense through the season, right? And if these are the 2 games we're looking at, 2 losses in extra innings, I think we can sit back and say this was a pretty good week for the Cardinals.
And the other thing is, and you can talk about this, is that it's always tough. And I don't care what the sport is. I don't care what the level of the sport is. When you're starting a season, the first few games is always tough to gauge because you don't know how good the opposition is yet for who you're playing. The Minnesota Twins could come out to be a division-winning ball club. We don't think the Angels are going to be that good, but sweeping the Twins, maybe the Twins aren't as good as we thought. So I mean, it always is kind of hard to judge the competition at that point in the season. So
yeah, and if you would have told me that the game we lose is against Kyle Hendricks, I probably would have said, yeah, that's right, because the man just beats.
Doesn't matter what uniform he's wearing.
Doesn't matter what uniform he's winning, he's going to beat us. So I think but all in all, you sit back and you look, and I think you have to be pretty happy with the approach that Brant Brown has taken with this team 1 week in.
I know, everybody's singing the praises of Brant Brown right now. That's no question.
No question about it, right? I mean, I think the biggest thing that I heard him say a couple times, and I've heard Arenado say this too, is situational hitting. To me, I really love the approach, and Arenado's a perfect example of this because I've seen him go to right field more times this year than I saw him go the entire last year, and we've only played a week of the season.
It seems the 2 biggest things is he says there's a time to slug and there's a time to hit. And, I think he's helped them figure out, try to, separate those 2. And Victor Scott and I think a couple of other guys have used the term hit collector. That's what they want to be, as a hit collector.
And it works out great, you know. And as you talk about, you know, Victor, and we talk about this season early, the speed has made a big difference. And watching him run and get out there is going to be an exciting way to go. Can you tell me the last time the Cardinals had 2 bunt singles in the same inning?
No.
Had to be Whitey Ball era, right?
Probably, yeah. Probably Coleman and Ozzie, or you know, McGee and Ozzie.
And just makes such a big difference. And I know, obviously, they're both kind of, you know, Victor's been playing better than Mason. Mason's been struggling. But to me, that's why I really like those two at the top of the lineup, because of what that offers. Now, Newbar's gotten off to a great start, so we, you know, can't nitpick it too much because it's worked out. But
42 runs for the first 6 games, 10 plus hits in each of the 6 games, 64 total hits, including 11 home runs. Cardinals didn't hit their 11th home run last year until the 13th game of the season. They did not have 6 double-digit hit games until the end of April. That's part of the difference in this club. And also, it's the fact the first time the Cardinals have opened the season with 10 or more hits in 6 consecutive games, first 6 games of the season since 1966. They'll be going for tie the franchise record of 7 games, which was set in 1956 in that opener of the series on Friday at Fenway Park.
As a team right now, 298 average, tied for second MLB.
And you've done that with Contreras starting the season 0 for 22, Wynn starting the season 0 for 20. So, and you got to think that that's not going to continue.
And no, but the other thing I like too is the approach of some of these guys are really seeing the ball well, right? And Newbar's a perfect example because he's taking walks, he's taking the pitches that come to him. But the other guy that we've talked about a lot on this show, it's got to be a key piece that's getting off to a nice start, is Jordan Walker.
Yeah, and I think you look at all those guys. I think Scott's played well to start the season. So, and especially with the younger Walker too, and even Arenado. But Arenado's a little bit different case because he's more of a veteran player like Contreras too. You don't worry about them. I mean, Arenado, maybe you worry about him a little bit if he's struggled at the start of the year simply because of these issues he's had in the past. But a veteran player, generally, you don't worry as much about what they do in the first week of the season. But for those young guys to get off to that good start, it just boosts their confidence, lets them play a little bit more free and relaxed. They're not as tight. They're not as worried about it. Even Lucan Baker's had a couple, you know, some big hits, even though he hasn't played that much.
For sure.
And Gorman the same way. He's only started, 1 game, 2 games? And he's been fine.
But he's 4 for 8 in the 8 at-bats he had, so which is huge. It's been great, right? The one thing that gets me to this team, and I don't want to badmouth anybody as we talk about, but you look at last year's team, and Goldie was kind of the leader of that team, right? But Goldie's a very quiet, shy, reserved guy. I think with Goldie not here, Nootbaar and Contreras are really getting Arenado out of his shell, and he looks like he's having fun. And I think that's going to make a big difference on this team. And I know I use the word fun a lot, but like, you can't tell me that anybody that's watched this team so far, it doesn't look like they're having fun.
No, I don't think there's anybody who could say that. And speaking of fun, we have to talk about the single most impressive performance of the first week of the season that happened on Wednesday afternoon at Busch Stadium in Ivan Herrera. Something that no Cardinal catcher in history, think about that, no Cardinal catcher in history, not Ted Simmons, not Yadier Molina, not Tim McCarver, not Walker Cooper, not Tony Pena, none of those guys, Pagnozzi, Matheny, never have hit 3 home runs in a game before.
It was pretty incredible, right? And I think he's probably the forgotten guy that we think about when we think about these young prospects and the young kids.
He's still 24. He's still 24.
That's what I'm saying. He was once a big part of this conversation originally of like, hey, Ivan Herrera is our catcher of the future. And we kind of forget about that as we talk about Gorman and Walker. But the question for you is, if he's hitting 3 home runs every day, would you trade that for the fact that he can't throw out a single runner at second base?
I might make him the DH and still let him give it back. I think there's a little bit of a trade-off there. Yeah,
there is a trade-off, right? And Pages offensively hasn't looked bad either.
No,
so
he's played well.
I think that's going to be the interesting question: is how do they work in playing time for both of these guys throughout the season?
I suspect you're going to kind of see a similar thing that they saw last year with Jordan Walker, and we've seen it a little bit already this first part of the season. Is you start those guys, hopefully they get a couple of hits, a couple of RBIs, whatever. By the 6th or 7th inning, you've got the lead, and then you put your defensive guys in the field. Then you put Enciani in the outfield. As long as he's here, he needs to do something to help the team, and then you bring in Pages to start on the days that he's not catching. So I think they've got a good combination there.
And it's a good problem to have, right? Baker's hitting the ball well, Gorman's hitting the ball well. So the question to me is, how do we continue to find at bats for all of these guys so that they stay fresh.
And it's also tough that first, I think there's 3 off days between the start of the season and April 16th. So, but those will go away here as we get farther into the season. So you'll be looking for opportunities to give guys a rest a little bit, I think. So you'll see, or somebody will be dealing with a little nagging something or other. So you got to give him a day. So I'm not really worried about that at this point. As long as they're all doing well, I think you'll find an opportunity to get them in the lineup. The one guy probably hasn't contributed as much as you would have expected him to is Brenton Donovan. He's probably been Contreras also, when he was in that hitless streak, had a lot of balls that were hard hit. I remember he had a line drive off the pitcher's foot that got thrown out. So I mean, there's just stuff like that happens. But I think that Donovan has hit a lot of balls hard that didn't get result in base hits. So again, he's another guy I'm not really worried about.
No, and I think it'll come through too. But again, this is where when Wynn is struggling and you're not batting Wynn or Victor Scott at the top of the lineup, you're putting Donovan in a stronger spot in that 2, 3, 4 hole somewhere in the middle there. Whereas, in my opinion, Donovan's probably better as your 5 hitter.
Mm-hmm.
And so as you push guys back through the lineup a little bit, I think as we work through and as Ali figures this out, I think we'll play with the lineup a little bit here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But again, he's not a guy that we're worried about yet.
I would think when if Scott continues to play well and hit well, I think he has a shot to hit some games that lead off, because I still think, even though I know he's got 4 stolen bases batting 8th, I think he has more opportunity to run pitching. It was funny, he actually got an extra stolen base and lost a hit on that one play we got home when Pajes got doubled off of second on the throw from the outfield, because he didn't know the guy was going to catch the ball or not. So we were joking after the game, and I told Pajes something about we said Victor lost a hit or whatever, and I told Pajes, I said, yeah, but you getting thrown out gave him the opportunity to get a steal, and he goes, yeah, I'm gonna have to tell him. I'm gonna have to tell him. So
and see, that's my biggest complaint, is where he's at in the lineup, because right now you got him behind Jordan Walker. There's not a lot of opportunity to run there.
Mm-hmm.
And Walker's trying to run a little bit more, which is good, but he only got one because of a balk, right? So
yeah,
that kind of helped. But to me, if Victor's batting first, there's a big difference there in how well he's able to get out and run. And you get, all of a sudden, you walk, get second base, anything can happen to score, and you got to lead 1-0 early. And I think having an early lead is key for this team.
And they did that most of the games that with Newbar. I think it was the first 4 games or 5 games, he got on to start off the first inning, and I think they scored first inning a lot of those ball games. So even if he wasn't stealing a base, they still were able to bring around and score.
To me, the way it's going right now, I would be putting Victor 1, Newbar 2, Contreras 3, and dropping Donovan behind Arenado. So then Donovan's got the protection of Herrera behind him, and I think it takes a little bit of pressure off of him. But the way Newt's getting on base, we need somebody in front of him on.
And I would agree with you on that. And so as we talk Cardinal baseball here, Mike Raines, Rob Raines, STLSportsPage.com, all of our programming here on STL Sports Page brought to you by the Drury Hotels and all of our other great sponsors, keeping it all free with no paywall, and we appreciate all of their support. Be sure, if you're traveling this summer, to go see the Cardinals on the road. Most of the cities that the Cardinals play in, especially east of St. Louis or the Midwest, have got Drury Hotels, so be sure and check them out. We use our special rate code SPORTS to get the best deal you can at those rooms. And even if you're going down to check out some of the minor leagues, we're going to talk about minor league baseball here in a minute. Memphis and Springfield, of course, have Drury Hotels as well, so be sure to check those out if you're going to be traveling later on, or even any family vacation as you're going this summer. I think you'll enjoy. If you haven't been to the Drury Hotel, you'll be very impressed with what they have to offer you. So let's flip the screen. I think we're all very happy with where we are offensively. What's your first week analysis of the pitching staff?
I think my question going in was going to be, can the pitching hold up, right? And they've given up some runs here and there, but overall, I would say you had a good first time through the rotation.
Mm-hmm.
I think Michaelis looked better. Fetty looked really good. So they're going to give up runs, but the question is, how do they progress throughout the season? Mm-hmm. But the guy who I thought looked really good was Libby.
Yeah. He had one little hiccup in that third inning when he gave up 4 consecutive hits. They got the 3 runs after he had the first 2 outs in the inning. But then he bounced back, pitched 3 more innings after that without allowing a run, which I think was key for the Cardinals to watch and see him do that he could get past that little bad inning.
And it's a nice thing to look at when you see that. And the other guy that we had talked about before had a really bad spring was Sonny Gray.
Mm-hmm.
But those first 2 starts now, he's looked fantastic.
Yeah, you probably left him in a little bit too long in that game. I know you sometimes think Ali pulls the starter too early.
That was too long.
I would have pulled him after got the first couple of hits in that seventh inning.
Giving up a solo home run to Mike Trout, he's one of the best players that's played the game. That's going to happen, right? He's that good. But I think when he walked the batter and then hit the next guy in the back of the foot there, I think that's where I probably would have pulled him.
And I think, the other thing too, though, maybe he was trying to go a little bit farther because the bullpen had been taxed the two previous nights with the extra inning games. So maybe there was a reason to try to give him that extra inning and save your bullpen a little bit more. But
again, not to keep talking about the offense, but it's only been a week. This team keeps fighting. They don't get down. Right there, Sonny gave up those runs. You're down a little bit more. Next thing you know, they turn around and tied it. So, I think that's an exciting thing to watch is the fight within this team.
Well, even the game before, they gave up 3 in the top of the 10th, come back with 3 in the bottom of the 10th, and had a chance to win it, like we talked about with Donovan on third, 1 out. And then, even give up 3 more runs in the 11th and still come back in the bottom of the inning, score 1, and have the tying run at the plate in the inning. So, yeah, I think there's the resilience is, and I know I've heard Chip Carey use that word, the resilience of that offense. And I think that's a good word for it.
And I think as we hone in on the pitching, though, the biggest question mark is going to be, can the offense keep up with the pitching to score more than they do? Now, I think we know our bullpen's going to be good, and I think we know it's going to work out well. Steven Matz, who's going to join the rotation here in about 2 weeks, had a really good outing. One of the first 4 inning saves in a long time that we hadn't seen before. So I think there are highlights to look at. I think it's just, how well can they continue this trend? Because right now we're looking at these guys at 1 start. We need to look back after 3 and 4 starts and see where we're at.
Cardinals will be on the road starting Friday at the opener at Fenway Park, the first home game for the Red Sox. And then they play 3 in Boston, then go to Pittsburgh for 3 before they come back home. Finally getting to play a National League team after 9 games against American League teams to start the season, kind of an oddity too.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of an oddity. And that's the weird part about the schedule, right, is you're not going to see as many teams in your division as you used to see. Right. But the positive side is you get to see a guy like Mike Trout that you don't get to see very often, or Aaron Judge when they come through. So I do like the schedule, but it also makes things tough and also makes you have to sit out a little bit more rain delays to get games in. So
yeah, the game on Wednesday, I didn't think they had any chance of playing, and yet then to get the whole game in, and Herrera hits the 3 home runs. So you just never know what you're going to see at the ballpark. Speaking of the opening week of the season, we had a chance to go out to the St. Louis County Library on Friday night and sit down and listen to Mike Matheny, the former Cardinal manager, longtime Gold Glove catcher, who's written a new book. He's got had another book out in the past called Matheny Manifesto, a lot about coaching young guys, young players. This book is specifically about coaching young players, and it's called The Dad Coach. A book, it says how to lead kids to succeed on and off the baseball field. So we had a great chance to talk to Mike. It's a book that I think anybody who's a young dad coaching his kids would enjoy this book and would be able to get some really valuable pointers out of it. So we taped a little bit of Mike's speech. So we're going to listen to Mike Matheny talking to the audience at St. Louis County Library about his new book, The Dad Coach.
That we had from a long-term study, and it was basically interviewing collegiate athletes, and it said, whatever sport that you're in, tell us exactly what it is that you would love for your parents to do when they come to watch you. And it was an overwhelming answer of nothing. Nothing. And I would say if we could ask our kids to be honest, I think that's still true today at almost every level. I talk to guys all the time, tell me about your parents. I did these impromptu, before I even thought about the book, just these impromptu studies of, hey, tell me how your parents went about their business and when they came and watched you play. What was the interaction? How did that whole thing go? And not 100%, but overwhelming once again were the odds of my parents came and they watched and didn't say a whole lot. They were just a silent source of support. And then afterwards, they told me that they loved watching me play.
And that was Mike Matheny out of the St. Louis County Library. Again, the book, Mike Matheny with Jerry Jenkins, The Dad Coach, how to lead kids to succeed on and off the baseball field. And Mike's the perfect guy to write that book because he really does listeners to that hour talk care about how those kids are progressing. And he said he had a lot of kids who contributed to the book, guys that he coached over the years who helped. And there's even some QR codes in the back of the book, which will link you to videos to you can watch to lead some of the lessons that they talk about. So available wherever books you can find any local bookstore.
he's got some great stories. And for anyone that hasn't heard, Matheny talk before, he's also going to be the keynote speaker at Christian Family Day this year at the ballpark with the Cardinals. So be sure to get your tickets for that and go listen to him talk, because he's going to be always an exciting time to listen to.
And speaking of books, we have a shameless plug to get out there. This book that Sally and I did actually came out right before the pandemic. All Roads Lead to St. Louis, a guide to the St. Louis Cardinals and their minor league franchises. This book is going to be, I'm trying to get to the right camera angle here. It's going to be out hopefully before Father's Day, $20. We tried to keep the price down so everybody could afford to buy it. It's going to have great stories about the minor leagues and all of the Cardinal affiliates. And as I say, some of the things that we had in it before the pandemic have changed, so we had to redo it a little bit, but it never really had an opportunity to take off, a few years ago. But I think people will enjoy it. Not just a travel guide, but obviously if you're going to Memphis or Peoria or Springfield, you'll have helpful hints and stuff like that about it, but also just some good information about the Cardinals and their minor league system. So encourage people to watch for that. We'll have obviously information about it when it comes out, hopefully before Father's Day.
And the foreword was written by John Rooney, so there's a lot of great insight that he has there too about where he's been throughout checking out this team throughout the minor leagues too.
And speaking of minor leagues, of course, love minor league coverage. And the 3 of the 4 Cardinal affiliates in the minor leagues, Memphis has been playing now for a week, but the other 3 full season clubs get their seasons underway on Friday night. A story up on STLSportsPage.com. It's got the full minor league rosters to open the day and on opening day, and who some of the prospects are that are going to be starting the different levels in the farm system. The most interesting assignment, I think, to watch will be J.J. Weatherholt, who obviously had a good spring training with the Cardinals at the big league club, drafted in the first round just a year ago. He's making the jump all the way from Palm Beach to Springfield, overlooking Peoria. So we're paying particular attention to how J.J. performs once the Springfield season gets underway.
And I think that's a great spot for him to start. Based on watching him this spring, he's, poised and ready to go and looks farther ahead in his game than a lot of other guys at that level. So I think it's a good test to see, but if he's ready to play there, I think you'll see him in the majors sooner than we think.
There's a little bit of concern with injuries, especially some of the pitching prospects. Tink Hance is on the 60-day injury list to start the season, a ribcage strain. They're a little not overly concerned about that. They called it a mild strain. They're going to hopefully use this time to kind of figure out some of what I was told was technical inconsistencies in his lineup. I think they're trying to change his arm angle a little bit to see if that can correct some of the injury problems he's had the last couple of years while he's on the IL. Chen Wei Lin, the Taiwan pitcher who's going to be at Peoria, he's also on the injury list to start the season. The one guy who's healthy again after 2 bad years, and he gets the ball for Springfield on Friday night, is Tekoa Roby.
And I think there's a big, buzz around Tekoa and how he's going to do this year, because he's a guy who, I think obviously they're going to push him long-term to be a starter, and I think he'll be a key starter within this rotation very soon. When that happens will be anybody's guess, but right now they just want him to get a few more innings since he's been injured for so long.
And Quinn Matthews scheduled to pitch on Friday night for Memphis as well, but they were rained out on Thursday, so McGreevy was supposed to make that start, so I'm not sure if they'll adjust that rotation or not. So what are you looking for from the Cardinals in the week ahead? Those 6 games in Boston and in Pittsburgh. What will make it a good week?
To me, it's the second time through the rotation, right? So I'm really looking at this rotation and the starters to see how long can they go, because at that first start, they were 75 to 85 pitches. So now you probably want to get them to about 90, I would say. So the question is, how many innings can you get with 90 pitches? So I want to see them in the ideal world, right? Your starters are going at least 6 innings every game. And then you don't have a lot to worry about. But as they do that, that's one key piece that I'm looking for throughout that next week.
Other thing, of course, coming up this week is the Final Four, the NCAA basketball tournament, and the championship game on Monday. Congratulations to all of our contestants. It's going to be a tight finish, and I think we had 241 entries in our contest, so we appreciate everybody who signed up. And I know hopefully all of you fared better than my bracket did. But the people who are still in the running, good luck to them. I think it's going to come down to which team wins the championship, because you got Auburn, you got Duke, you got some Florida votes all in there. I don't think anybody that's in the running picked Houston to win.
When you say it comes down to the championship and who wins, that's generally how these things work out.
Well, I mean, as far as it's by points, though, and each one you get farther in, you get more points for that win. So,
yes.
that's what I'm saying. So the people who have different teams winning the championship, if their team wins, they're going to win our contest.
Correct. Yes.
That's what I'm trying to say. Maybe I didn't say it right, but that's what I'm trying to say. That's why I write instead of talk. So, all right. So it'll be an interesting week. Cardinals, of course, on the road in Boston and Pittsburgh. We'll have all the coverage for you on stlsportspage.com with our daily game reports as well as some upcoming features and stuff. So appreciate everybody for reading the site. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. If you got any questions that you'd like us to address on a future episode of the Reigns on the Cardinals podcast, you can email us at reigns@stlsportspage.com, and we'll be happy to get to them on next week's broadcast. So for Mike Reigns, Rob Reigns, thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you at the ballpark.